Good day to the esteemed judges and my fellow students. Words have power. Just imagine a world where speaking out against the government is a crime, where the media is forced to hide the truth, and where religious freedoms are suppressed. Sadly, this is the reality for many countries across the world today, but not for America. This is because of the First Amendment. In 1791, James Madison had secured us 5 fundamental rights: the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, the freedom of the press, the freedom of assembly, and the freedom to petition the government. These rights have become the cornerstone of American democracy. Madison had once said, "The advancement of diffusion and knowledge is the only true guardian of liberty." He understood for democracy to thrive, its citizens must be able to speak their minds, they must be able to practice their beliefs, they must be able to write freely, they must be able to gather together, and most importantly, they must be able to challenge those in power. However, as we celebrate these freedoms, let's not forget a key warning from Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., who once said, "Even the most stringent protection of the First Amendment cannot protect someone who yells fire in a theater to stir panic." The First Amendment, and by extension the freedom of speech, is supposed to let people know the truth, not to cause harm and cause division. So, what does this look like in practice? Consider Martin Luther King in 1963 with his "I Have a Dream" speech, which called to the nation to live up to its ideals. King's words were not universally welcomed. In fact, a lot of people called for him to be arrested, as they believed his calls for justice were calls for danger and for division. However, the First Amendment allowed him for his right to speak, his right to assemble, and his right to demand change. His words were guarded by the Constitution as they did not breed chaos. They were meant to create justice, unity, and truth. Another example is in 1961 with the landmark case Tinker versus Des Moines Independent Community School District, where students and teachers were suspended due to wearing black armbands to protest America's involvement in the Vietnam War. The Supreme Court had ruled that the First Amendment protected their right to protest, affirming that neither the students or the teachers had shed their constitutional rights of freedom of speech and expression at the schoolhouse gate. This ruling has reinforced the right to express oneself in the cornerstone of our democracy, even in places like schools. Now, in our modern age of social media, everybody has the platform to voice their opinions. But with this newfound power comes newfound responsibility. The First Amendment protects free speech. That does not protect speech that is harmful or deceitful. It does not shield lies or protect those who seek to divide the nation, but rather to inform. In an age of misinformation, we must be careful to be able to preserve our truth and know that freedom of speech is not absolute. The First Amendment is not a shield for hate, but rather it is a beacon for truth. John Adams had once warned, "Liberty cannot be preserved without a general knowledge among the people." Liberty and truth go hand in hand. Without truth, democracy will crumble. And so we must be able to safeguard the truth, even when it is unpopular, and especially when lies seem to be more appealing to the public. So, how can we defend our First Amendment in today's world? First, we must understand our rights. Then we must know how to use them responsibly. And we must know that the First Amendment is not a relic of our past. It is something that's continuing to affect our life into the future. It is not just a law, it is a responsibility. As long as we treat it as a light for truth, democracy will not only survive, it will thrive. Thank you.